In the distant future, Earth becomes a complete nightmare. Climate disasters rage out of control, deadly pandemics wipe out millions, and never-ending wars erupt over the few remaining resources. Cities crumble, and survival is no longer possible. In a desperate bid to escape the chaos, the powerful elite abandon the planet and flee to a distant exoplanet, Kepler 209, leaving the rest of humanity to fend for themselves. But 2 generations later, life on Kepler 209 turns into a disaster too. The planet's radiation makes everyone infertile, pushing their entire population toward extinction. In a frantic attempt to fix things, they launch the Ulsses Project to find out if Earth can be lived on again. Ulsses 1 disappears after landing gone without a trace, hoping for a miracle. They launch Ulsses 2, it reaches Earth but crash lands in the ocean. The crew, stunned and confused, watches as the tide slowly retreats. And for the first time in ages, humans set foot on Earth again, unsure of what horrors or hope await them. One of the astronauts, Blight, checks on her team only to find one of the female crewmates dead. Shocked but focused, she rushes back to the capsule and discovers Tucker clinging to life. His condition is critical. She quickly treats his wounds, and once he's stable, they talk about their next move. The tide will return in just 6 hours, which means they have a limited window to gather Earth samples and report their findings back to Kepler 209. Tucker tries to stand, but his body is too weak to move. Blake makes a bold decision: she go alone. As she ventures out, she streams a live feed so Tucker can monitor her progress. She explores the eerie, abandoned landscape and collects critical samples. Then, something catches her eye: a bizarre, crab-like creature. She studies it closely and realizes it reproduces through internal fertilization. A major clue. Tucker suddenly urges her to test herself, and that's when the real mission is revealed. Ever since the first settlers left for Kepler 209, radiation has wiped out human fertility. Now they must figure out how long it takes to reverse that damage on Earth. Blake hesitates, saying it's too early, but Tucker pushes her. Finally, she uses the biometer. Despite a few encouraging signs, she's still in. Suddenly a violent storm starts rolling in. Tucker, still weak, warns Blake to be extra cautious. He tries to contact Kepler too, but the system shows the communication window 1T open for another 4 hours' time is slipping away fast. Then he notices the weather getting worse and visibility dropping to nearly 0. In a desperate move, he fires a flare into the sky, hoping Blake will see it and come back. But instead of Blake, strangers appear. A group of unknown men ambush him. It's chaos. They attack, knock him out, and drag both him and the capsule away. Blake returns, just moments too late. The capsule is gone. Acting fast, she switches to thermal night vision on her weapon and begins tracking Tucker's captors. But before she can strike, more men jump out of the shadows and slam her to the ground. She's knocked out cold. Later, Blake and Tucker awaken in a dim underground bunker. They're prisoners now, held by Earth's remaining survivors, people who call themselves the Muds. Seeing Tucker badly hurt, Blake climbs upward, searching for help. She spots a small child, but before she can call out, she slips and tumbles right back into the bunker. Blake turns to Tucker and points out something shocking: the presence of children means these people were never in. That changes everything. Suddenly, the Muds toss a rope into the bunker, giving Blake a way out. Once she's up, they plead with her to save one of their injured men. She agrees but tells them she needs her medical kit first. One of the Muds, Narvik Hugh, surprisingly, speaks Blake's language, escorts her back to the crash site. They recover the kit, and Blake rushes to treat the wounded man. She works quickly, stabilizes them, and earns their trust. But once the job is done, the Muds lead her right back into the bunker. Meanwhile, Tucker knows his time is running out. With heavy blood loss and no strength left, he looks Blake in the eyes and says he can't go on. Before taking a special suicide pill, he begs her to find Ulsses 1, convinced her father might still be alive somewhere on Earth. That memory hits Blake hard. She recalls her father's goodbye, his hopeful voice saying the mission would help humanity. He handed her a single match and whispered they'd meet again someday. Back in the present, the tide returns fast. The bunker begins to flood. Blake claws her way up, screaming for help. Just in time, the very man she saved earlier opens the hatch and pulls her to safety. They dash toward the boats as the water rises, and Blake is quickly tied to one of them, uncertain of what's next. Blake suddenly remembers an old conversation with her father he once told her about a weather station on Earth called the Henderson Hub. That station had picked up promising data, pointing to a new zone where life could begin again. She also recalls the heartbreaking moment they said goodbye the day he boarded Ulsses 1 to return to Earth. Eventually, the tide rolls back, and Blake is tossed into the bunker once more. Inside, she spots a group of curious children playing with her precious biometer kit. She asks them to return it, but they just giggle and keep playing. Desperate, she tries connecting with one of them, a girl named Me. Drawing an image of Kepler 209, Blake manages to build a small bridge between their languages. Finally, Me starts to understand and listens closely as Blake pleads for the biometer. Suddenly, Chaos erupts. All the girls, including a baby, sprint into the bunker and hide in fear. Blake scrambles up to see what's happening and spots a terrifying scene. Another group is launching a surprise attack on the Muds, taking every last one of them hostage. One of the attackers moves closer to the bunker. Everyone goes completely still, holding their breath. Then, the baby starts crying. Blake, completely unprepared to handle an infant, panics, but somehow, she calms the baby down just in time. Once the threat passes, Narvik grabs her weapons and gears up. She's going after the kidnappers. Blake decides to help. As they move out, Blake finds out a shocking detail. Mia is Narvik's daughter. They track the captors and find him near their boat, preparing to leave. Narvik, mistaking Blake's flare gun for a weapon, wants to charge in. Blake stops her and explains it's just a flare for signaling. She suggests using it as a distraction to save the hostages. But tensions flare. The two women argue fiercely, and things get physical. In the scuffle, Blake knocks Narvik out cold. Without wasting a second, she fires the flare, blasting a bright light into the sky and throwing the kidnappers into total confusion. With the kidnappers thrown into disarray by the flare, Blake seizes the moment. She sneaks aboard the boat while their attention is elsewhere. Inside, she finally spots her biometer kit. But just as she reaches for it, something freezes her in place. One of the crew members is wearing a shirt from Ulsses 1. Her heart races. This isn't just any shirt, it could be proof that someone from the lost mission survived. Realizing the danger and potential breakthrough, she makes a risky move. Blake hides her identity and blends in with the rest of the kidnapped villagers, locking herself in the cage with them. Eventually, the boat reaches a grim destination, an area packed with decaying shipwrecks and rotting vessels. The captives are forced off the boat and lined up in rows. A man named Paling steps forward and starts sorting them like cattle. The men are shoved toward a labor division, and when he sees me, he coldly orders her to be taken somewhere else. Then it happens. Paling sports Blake's gun. His suspicion grows. He barks out a demand, wanting to know who it belongs to. As he inspects the group one by one, something catches his attention. They're also trying to plant trees, but the relentless tides keep washing away the fragile seedlings. Later, Blake tries to rest. The next morning, she showers on. Suddenly, she notices something astonishing. Her menstrual cycle has returned. It's a huge sign maybe she's becoming fertile again. That same day, she joins a group of children inside the ship for lessons, sitting beside me. Later, Neil pulls her aside and shares a secret. He's not allowed to study with the others and gets private lessons instead. Then, he gently shows her a tiny tree seedling and explains how it grows, exactly the way her father used to explain it to her when she was a child. Blake looks at Neil curiously and asks, "Where did you learn all that?" His answer stuns her. He says, a mysterious man near the engine room talks to him through the pipes and teaches him everything about trees. Blake's heart skips a beat. Without wasting a second, she heads straight for the engine room. As she moves through the shadowy corridors, her flashlight cuts through the darkness. Suddenly, she spots Paling. Her pulse quickens, but he doesn't suspect a thing and walks right past her. She keeps moving until she reaches a locked door. Through a tiny peephole, she spots a man inside. Working quietly, her breath catches in her throat. Then Gibson appears. His face is filled with guilt. He confesses everything. He says, her father didn't die during the Mud Rebellion. Instead, he led it. He fell in love with one of the Muds and joined their side. Blake stares at him, stunned, and demands to see her father. Gibson finally unlocks the door. Inside, there he is, her father. He turns, sees her, and instantly recognizes her. They run into each other's arms, overwhelmed by the moment. Through tears, Blake asks him if what Gibson said is true. Did he really betray the Ulsses mission? Her father takes a deep breath and replies, "I did what I had to stop history from repeating itself. I couldn't let them destroy another world." Her father looks Blake in the eye and pleads with her, "Look around. Earth may be healing, but the Keplers shouldn't come back." His voice is firm, but Blake can't take it. Furious, she storms out of the room, her mind spinning. Outside, she stares at the distant Henderson hub. It towers like a relic of hope. Gibson appears beside her and says the rebels once tried to destroy it, but his team managed to protect it just in time. Blake nods and tells him something he didn't expect. She plans to send a message to Kepler 209 from that very hub. Gibson narrows his eyes. "What kind of message?" he asks. She answers with quiet determination, proof that humans can now reproduce on Earth. Then, she drops the biggest news yet. Her hormones are balanced, and she's fertile again. Gibson's face lights up with shock and excitement. He says he'll get Paling to search for the biometer immediately. Later that evening, Blake sits down to dinner with Gibson, Neil, and Mun. As they eat, Mun shares a haunting memory, the story of Neil's birth. She recalls being in the ocean when the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. Panic set in fast, but Gibson showed up just in time. He cut her open, rescued Neil from the water, and somehow saved both their lives. Then he carefully treated her wounds until she fully recovered. Just then the lights go out. The ship plunges into darkness. Paling rushes in, breathless, warning that some gods have been killed. Gibson wastes no time. He tells Munn and Neil to head for the safest room on board. Then, he turns to Blake and instructs her to get back to her quarters. It's the only place she'll be safe. Out of nowhere, Narvik ambushes Blake. Her face is fierce, and her demand is clear. Blake doesn't argue. She leads Narvik straight to me, reuniting them in a tense, emotional moment. But peace is short. Paling and his men catch them red-handed and launch a brutal attack on. Before they drag her away, Narvik manages to shout one last warning to Blake. Gibson and his men only take the young girls. Later, Blake is taken to Moan, who gently treats her wounds. As Munn carefully cleans her cuts, she gazes into Blake's eyes and softly says, "You have your father's eyes." Blake is stunned, but before they can speak more, Gibson barges in. He calmly explains that Narvik used to be one of his guards before she went rogue. That's why she could speak Blake's language. It all makes sense now. But Blake doesn't let it slide. Her eyes narrow as she asks, "Why do you only take the young girls?" Gibson answers coldly, "Most of the women on Kepler 209 are already in their 40s. With the journey back taking another 10 years, even if fertility returns, they'll be too old to carry children." Blake is horrified, but Gibson insists he's doing this to preserve their race. Then he admits her father was completely against this plan. Soon after, Paling brings in the biometer kit, but when they open it, it's empty. Gibson turns to Blake, furious, and demands to know where it is. She calmly tells him they must have left it behind at the mud settlement. Gibson orders her to return there with Paling to retrieve it. Blake quickly says Narvik should come too, but Gibson shuts that down. He coldly says Narvik will be executed at dawn. Elsewhere on the ship, Neil is quietly playing with a toy when suddenly Gibson's eyes widen, hidden inside the toy. He's found it. Later, Blake returns to her room, only to discover me hiding there, frightened but safe. He steps closer, pulls out a collar, and finds her ID tag. That's all he needs. He instantly knows the weapon is hers. Without a word, Paling escorts Blake into a separate room and orders her to wait. Inside, she meets a boy named Neil. He looks at her curiously and asks, "Are you an astronaut?" Before she can speak, a man enters Gibson. He smiles and says, "She is." He shakes her hand and admits he has been waiting for Ulsses 2 for a very long time. Then, hearing her full name, it all clicks. He once knew her, when she was just a little girl. Blake wastes no time. She tells Gibson everything. She explains how their capsule crashed, what happened to the biometer, and her real mission to find Ulsses 1 and send a message back to Kepler 209. But then Gibson delivers a crushing blow. Ulsses 1 was completely destroyed. His voice turns somber as he shares more. He and her father had been close friends, both part of the Ulsses 1 mission. But everything changed when the Muds, who were friendly at first, turned against them without warning. One brutal night, they attacked and wiped out the entire camp. Her father didn't survive the betrayal. Gibson says the Muds had found old weapons from a derelict ship and used them in the uprising. Now, though, his people are running dangerously low on supplies. Time is running out. He then tells Blake about Neil, the boy she met earlier. Gibson adopted him after his mother Moon gave birth during one of the harshest seasons. Her father had big plans. He was designing a dam to harness the power of the tide and bring back stability. The work is still in progress, but they need more time before Kepler 209 citizens can safely return. Their reunion is cut short when Palin barges in, searching for me. But then his attention shifts. His eyes lock onto Blake, and something sinister flashes across his face. Without warning, he tries to assault her. As he grabs her, Blake stays calm, then acts fast. She slips the suicide pill into his mouth mid-struggle. Within seconds, he stumbles back, gasps, and drops dead. Without wasting a moment, Blake snatches his gun and grabs me. Together, they race through the corridors, determined to find Nut. They search the ship and start freeing the imprisoned Muds from their cages one by one. After rescuing the adults, they burst into the children's room and set the young girls free to Hope is alive again. Then Blake rushes to free her father. He looks at her urgently and says, Gibson and Neil are headed to the Henderson hub. The tide's gone. At first, Blake isn't too alarmed. She assumes Gibson still needs the biometer to prove fertility, but her father stops her with a jaw-dropping truth. Neil is his son. That changes everything. The proof Gibson needs already exists. Stunned and emotional, Blake throws her arms around her father. He clutches her tightly and begs her, "Go now. You have to stop that message." Blake leads the charge. She helps the Muds escape, guiding them onto boats while taking down several Gibson-esque guards in her path. She is unstoppable. She races toward the Henderson hub and bursts in, only to find Gibson already at the console, moments away from sending the message to Kepler 209. Blake raises her gun and demands he stop, but he grabs Neil, holding him at gunpoint. "Back off," he shouts. To show he means it, Gibson turns and shoots Munn right in front of them. Blake freezes. Her heart is pounding. Slowly, she lowers her weapon, letting him resume the transmission. But the moment his guard drops, she lunges at him with all her strength. The two crash into the water, struggling beneath the surface. She wraps her hands around his throat as the water churns wildly, but she's losing air. Just as she's about to slip under, Narvik appears. She dives in, grabs Blake, and pulls her back to safety just in time. In the quiet aftermath, Blake kneels beside Neil. She hands him the match her father once gave her. This, she says softly, is a symbol of hope. She tells him the Keplers are on their way and maybe, just maybe, they'll bring more trees to help heal the planet. Finally, the Muds return home, their settlement filled with cheers and relief. While far above, the future looms, the Keplers are coming, the end.